Hey guys, welcome back to the 3G Family Network. Thank you for your continuous support, and I hope that you'll continue to support this channel and help us grow for the upcoming year. In today's video, I would like to talk about Wode Maya. Wode Maya is Africa's most influential vlogger, and he is one of those vloggers that's on a mission to break down stereotype about Africa, showing the beauty of Africa, and not that Africa is just this poverty-stricken continent. So we'd like to talk about Wode Maya a bit today, because Wode Maya has been on this mission to, as I said, break down stereotype, to connect Africa, especially to the diaspora. And recently he was in the Caribbean for roughly 5 or 6 months. So we're going to use today to talk about the impact that Wode Maya has been having on Africa and the diaspora. So in Wode Maya's 5 to 6 months in the Caribbean, we saw him meeting with two of, I would say, the Caribbean's most influential leaders. The first one is President Ali from Guyana, and the second one is the Honorable Mia Motley from Barbados. And they, in their interview, they talk a lot about the African diaspora in the Caribbean, and also connecting Africa and the Caribbean. And I personally believe that this conversation is well overdue, because growing up in Jamaica in the 70s and the 80s, this has been something that Rastafarians have been championing for decades, and this is something that Marcus Garvey himself started as a mission to connect Africa to the diaspora. So we're going to take a look at these two interviews, and we're going to have a conversation in the comment section. I hope that you leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll learn together in this video. We'll learn from each other, because there's a lot to unpack in this video.
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Been watching your stuff. I'm sorry I couldn't meet with you on your last trip, no?
And it's good that you actually made the time to meet me this time around.
Yeah.
It's really a pleasure. I've been a big fan. I always.
Your shirt.
Oh wow! Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's from Ghana?
Yeah, from Ghana.
See that?
Yeah. You know chocolate? Oh wow! Yeah, that's chocolate. I'm so glad that I'm wearing a brand that everyone knows. Nice to meet you.
So how's it been?
So far so good. I'm just waiting for my Barbadian passport.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I don't know how it's going to be and how long I have to wait for it.
We have a new immigration bill coming, so you'll find out soon.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm really a big fan. I was supposed to meet you in Munich Security Conference, but I think you didn't come around.
I couldn't
Yeah,
get there.
because
It's too difficult.
I had so many questions for you that time.
Yeah.
But when they told me that she's not coming, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I'll take 2 questions now.
Yeah, okay. Can I?
Tell me.
I have just 2
Yeah,
questions.
that's what I thought.
I've seen you go to Africa a lot. Why are you always in Africa, by the way?
No, why not go to Africa? I mean, we have traditionally been focused since being transplanted here on going to the North Atlantic countries. And it's about time that we bridge the Atlantic again. When we came to office, we made it clear that we wanted to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. The Atlantic is to my east, and the only thing that is between Barbados and Africa is ocean. So that the most natural place to go is to Africa. Apart from anything else, historically, this is where we've come from. Culturally, this is affecting. Most of our values have been shaped by being African. Our food, our language, our behavior, our rhythm, everything. And it would be a travesty that when we have control of our own destiny, that we don't seek to correct the wrong things and to ensure that we can bridge the gap.
How are we bridging the gap?
By literally trying to make sure that first of all we bring awareness The second thing that we need to do, and we're trying to work on that now, is how do we create the opportunities for transport? You or my people should not need to apply for a transit visa to come and visit one another. And if you are denied a transit visa in the US or the UK or Europe, then we are becoming victims of our own territories. So that we need, as independent countries, to be able to determine that we can control where we go, how we go, when we go. And therefore, the modalities of transport have to be conquered. If we can do that for people, then we can do it for goods.
I think we need more Africa and Caribbean connection.
Absolutely.
Because
that's what you're doing, aren't you?
Now I'm trying my best. It's more like oh wow. I guess he's a fan then. I think that's the end of the video. But Your Excellency, I'm so sorry. I mean,
Call me Mia, please.
Oh wow, Mia. Wow. Sheesh. First name. Like I don't know what to say now. We personally, I think the connection between Africa and the Caribbean should not be too diplomatic sometimes, because I feel like the ordinary Africans really don't know what is happening in the Caribbean.
That's why you are important, because it can't only be at the level of governments. It can't only be at the level of big business. It has to be at the level of ordinary people. If you go and ask Bajans what movies they were watching 7, 8, 9 years ago, they'll tell you it's a lot of the Nollywood movies from Nigeria.
Yep.
So that's ordinary people. But can the ordinary people get across?
Okay, so I would like to stop the video here just to make a few points. It's very interesting because the continent of Africa and the Caribbean are the two most colonized. I know Africa as a continent, the most colonized. Like, there are 54, 55 countries in Africa, and only one country in Africa, which is Ethiopia, escaped colonization. Every single Caribbean island was colonized or is still under some colonial rule. And it is so interesting because, you know, as a Jamaican growing up in the 70s and the 80s, in particular, Rastafarians have taken this interest in Africa for a very long time. And, you know, we have seen the demonization of Africa in terms of showing the worst images of Africa. You know, growing up, we've never seen good images out of Africa. And similar to the in the Caribbean, we see a few more good images in the Caribbean, but it's all, you know, resorts and beaches and, you know, just used as a place for the elite to come and to enjoy sun, sand, and sea. So I believe it is very interesting now that a leader like Mia Motley, when Barbados is now independent, and we see leaders like herself and Ali from Guyana taking more of an interest now in terms of the connection between the Caribbean and Africa. For decades, we thought Africa was a 2-day trip from the Caribbean. And mainly because you cannot get to Africa without a transit route. And most of the transit route are through Europe and America. I think the other two transit route is Brazil and Panama, I think. But you could not get to Africa straight from the Caribbean. You could not get to, no one could travel from Africa to the Caribbean on a straight flight. And we saw just 5 years ago when we had the year of the return, and we saw a chartered flight from Ghana to Montego Bay that took 5 hours. And that was astonishing for a lot of people because people thought that wasn't possible. Like 5 hour, like Africa is so close to the Caribbean because for decades we have been traveling for 25 hours, 30 hours to get to Africa. And we saw the same thing with Barbados, I think, had a straight flight from, I think, Ghana or Kenya. So I think conversations like this are very important. And I'm happy that we have leaders in the Caribbean, like Mia Motley, to be an advocate for us, chartering our own destiny and having this connection between the Caribbean and Africa. Let's continue watching and see.
They're the ones who may want to come but cannot come because you can't get there. So we've got to create the bridges, the sea bridges and the air bridges in order to let people and goods flow.
But you don't think we need that direct flight?
That's what I'm talking about.
But I'm saying it's taking quite a long time.
But you have to have people on both sides ready to it, and we're prepared to invest in the marketing, but we need people on the other side of the Atlantic also ready to do it. Because while we say we want it, as you know, you have to promote and market. If you don't promote and market, the seats will be what? Empty. And if the seats are empty, the flights will be cancelled. So it's that mechanism, but there's also a very technical problem. One of the things that happened in the last few years with COVID and the stopping of movement of planes, the same number, is that a lot of airlines are in fact awaiting planes. And a lot of airlines are awaiting access to time to train pilots on the simulators. So in a very real sense, even though we want to move with pace and haste, we're still constrained by what is available in terms of both planes as well as pilots.
Don't you think it's about time we have the Caribbean as a seat in African Union?
Oh, well, we already recognized as part of the 6th region with diaspora. And as you know, we started the CARICOM AU conferences, was it 2 years ago? And then in the last year, that painting came from us, from the president of the Africa Exim Bank on his first visit. And in less than 18 months, we were able to have the first Africa-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum here. We had the second one in Guyana a few months ago in October. We've been able to have the Africa Exim Bank establish its offices here in Barbados as regional headquarters. We are now working with other banks in Africa who want to be able to establish in the Caribbean. And that's where you'll see it start first, because if people are comfortable with banks that they know, just like Republic Bank is in Ghana. Republic Bank is a Trinidadian entity. And just as they're there, people will feel comfort with those institutions and brands that they know. So we only see more and more activity happening. We were constrained by COVID. Had we not had COVID, I think we would be much further ahead. But the movement of information, the movement of people, that's where it's at. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so
my
much.
brother.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about travel. I find it very, very interesting because I have friends that live in Europe, in the UK. And even for the past 20 years, I was always amazed of the ease of travel throughout Europe, the affordability of travel throughout Europe. Like I've had friends that living in the UK and would be able to jump on a flight to go to Spain and spend under £100, and vice versa. So the ease of travel through Europe was always fascinating to me. And then the more I started learning about Africa and to see 54, 55 countries in Africa that, as I said, were all colonized by different European nations. And even a lot of the countries in Africa share borders, and it's so difficult to get from one African country to the next. It's like if you live in Ghana, if you try to travel to 10 African countries, it's going to work out to be pretty expensive. If you live in Europe, you can travel to 10 countries in 10 days without visa restrictions, with affordability. So now I believe that a lot of the African nations are more independent. A lot of Caribbean nations are more independent. It's going to be very interesting to see what the future travel looks like between Africa and between the Caribbean itself. Because for me, like, I believe 20 years ago in the Caribbean, we had Air Jamaica, which was a very, I would say, pretty successful airline for like a Caribbean nation. We had Caribbean Airline, and those two airlines in the Caribbean were fighting for flights to JFK, to LaGuardia, to Heathrow Airport, which are very expensive, like seats. And it made me wonder, like, what if Caribbean Airline, what if Air Jamaica at the time, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, would have said, you know what, those markets, we have tons of planes coming to the Caribbean, you know, Air Canada, American Airline, like WestJet, all these different airlines, we don't need to fight for those seats. Let's go and try to connect Africa. How different today would have been. Because the reality is that Africa is not as downtrodden as we would have led to see during the media for the past 20, 30 years. Yes, there's poverty there, but like anywhere else. Nigeria, huge population, huge middle class. Just imagine if we started with Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and the connection between Africa. Africa has over 1 billion potential travelers that would want to come to the Caribbean. And instead of focusing on Africa, you know, because Jamaica is pretty much almost in a hostage situation to the US. One travel advisory could crash Jamaica tourism industry because 60% of our visitors to Jamaica are from the US. The same for Bahamas, the same for Barbados. Just imagine if we open that airspace and we could have like Africans flooding the Caribbean. How amazing that would be. So let's continue watching some more of these clips.
There is so much potential between ourselves and among ourselves that we need now to focus on that potential, build the infrastructure, build the capacity, and that has been a problem for the CARICOM region. And this is something we're trying to address. We are now getting to a position where we're addressing it. That is the connectivity between ourselves, how we integrate to ensure that, you know, a 4-hour travel or a 2-hour travel is a 2-hour travel and not a 2 days travel.
And as part of the CARICOM, I also have a special request. I mean, as an African traveling within the Caribbean, I find it like it's so difficult for an African to explore the Caribbean. How do we fix that?
So that is what we want. See, this is an era of digitization. So in CARICOM itself now, we are working on the free movement of people within the region. So once we fix the rules and the standard on the free movement of people within the region, then we can work on what will be the standard that will apply across the board. To have, if you have a tourist come to one island, to make it seamless for that person to go to all the islands, to go to all the countries within CARICOM. So let me give you an example. Yeah. And I just want to prove to you that it works.
Okay.
So when there's Cricket World Cup, we had a sunset legislation in which every country implemented a legislation as if we were traveling in one domestic place. So when you arrive in one country, it was made seamless for that person to go to the other countries to look at the games in all the countries. So it is this mechanism that we have to enshrine now, first by fixing ourselves and then fixing the system to push the tourism and the potential. When you look at places like India, China, Africa, and you look at the future and see the growth of the middle class in these areas, the size of the middle class, it is a no-brainer. The opportunities in tourism, the persons who will have more disposable income will be persons from these regions, and we have to definitely find ways in which we better integrate.
I just hope that we start integrating very soon, because I believe that there are more Africans that really want to explore the Caribbean.
Definitely.
And my presence here, I've seen a lot of changes. You know, more Africans are telling me, I want to go to Guyana, I want to go to Suriname, I want to go to Jamaica. How do I get there? I'm here with him. That's why I'm asking him all the questions, because they need to fix this as soon as possible.
What is interesting to me about the difficulty of traveling within the Caribbean itself and between the Caribbean and the continent of Africa is that when you look at the Commonwealth is made up of 53 countries. Over 85% of the Commonwealth is between Africa and the Caribbean. The exception is Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Those three countries, no visa restrictions. Some of the best passports in the world, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. You can travel pretty much anywhere in the world with those passports. There are a few other countries. There's like India. I think India, there's visa restrictions. There's Fiji. But apart from that, it's pretty much Caribbean and African nations that are 85% of the Commonwealth, and pretty much all or most of these countries have visa restriction. You know, there's some of the islands in the Caribbean which I don't think they're part of the Commonwealth. There are a few islands, I think Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, there are a few islands that there are no visa restriction, but for the most part, Africa and most of the Caribbean, visa restrictions. And it's interesting because before 1962, like most Caribbean countries, I'm not sure about Africa, but you could just jump on a plane and go to England, no problem. But all of that changed. And, you know, so these conversations are very important to have, because not just the visa restriction just does not affect us like going to Europe. But as I said, it affects the connection between Caribbean and African nations, because the reality is that those are where the transit flights are, through Europe and America. So these conversations are very important, and you know, please feel free to leave your comment in the comment section. Like if you're from the Caribbean, if you're from any African countries with difficulties of traveling. If you are from Africa and you want to come to the Caribbean and you have been denied visa to come to the Caribbean, or transit visa or whatever, just share your experience in the comment section, and we'll continue to watch this video and more clips, and we'll leave our comment after this.
Ghanaian friends I have now, so the African Prosperity Award means a lot to me.
Yep.
Because when we can recognize and I took that award on behalf of all of Guyana. I'm at an international stage and they have not introduced me from Ghana. Every time a Guyanese goes somewhere, he's introduced as from Ghana. And I'm in Ghana now, and I'm introduced as I'm from Guyana. So we are making progress. Because we come from a rich heritage where our ancestors, our foreparents came from India, Africa. And from Africa, the slave trade, the greatest indignity that ever done in human history was in the slave trade. And that connection with Africa, that cultural but blood connection, and this is what we miss sometimes. This is not only a cultural connection or an economic connection. So a lot of people ask me the question, so yeah, you're going to Africa, what are the economic linkages and the financial linkages and the technological linkages? But there is something deeper, and that deeper thing is our linkage by blood. The linkage by blood that connects us, and there is no greater linkage than linkage by blood.
Coming to Guyana, I don't need visa. My wife could not come to this trip with me because my wife needed a visa to come here. Your Excellency, since you've been going to Africa a lot, you don't think it's about time to scrap off all visas for Africa? If the connection is that deep, I think The entire Africa is watching this video, by the way. And on behalf of them, I'm just requesting, Your Excellency, can this be done tomorrow? By scrapping visas for Africans that are coming to Guyana.
So this is a work in progress.
Okay.
And it's not only Guyana, the whole CARICOM region. We are now looking at ways not only on making it easier for us to travel between each other, but from Guyana to Ghana is a 5-hour direct flight.
Yep.
But we travel for 25 hours, 26 hours, 2 days to get here. We have to fix that. So it is fixing the people-to-people contact, making it easier, seamless, as you mentioned, and also ensuring we build the connectivity. And Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, we are working on this mission of bringing Africa closer to us through more simplified means of traveling, but more importantly, building that connectivity.
I think it's very important because even when I was coming in here, it was a hard time. I was in Jamaica. It took me 12 hours to get to Guyana.
That's right. And that's those are flights you can do in 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
Exactly.
The problem is exactly what we have not. You see, one of the problems with the developing world is that we don't focus enough on the potential that exists within ourselves. So we don't invest in the infrastructure that allows us to do more between ourselves and among ourselves. Wow. We always look at our prosperity linked to the multilateral development agencies, linked to the larger markets, the more sophisticated markets. And I'm not saying that this is not important. Whilst this is important, there is so much potential between ourselves and among ourselves that we need now to focus on that potential, build the infrastructure, build the capacity, and that has been a problem for the CARICOM region. And this is something we are trying to address. We are now getting to a position where we are addressing it. That is the connectivity between ourselves, how we integrate to ensure that a 4-hour travel or a 2-hour travel is a 2-hour travel and not a 2 days travel.
So that was it for the clips, and I must say that I am extremely hopeful from just these 2 interviews and from what I'm seeing going on in places like Ghana and Kenya, the movements that is going on. We have seen the flight from Ghana to Jamaica, the 5-hour flight, and just very hopeful that this will become like a fixed route and not just like a chartered flight, or testing out the possibility that it will become a reality pretty soon. And I'm very happy that we have 2 leaders in the Caribbean that are working hard towards this connection. And I hope that this can be something that CARICOM themselves, like the entire Caribbean leaders, can champion, and not just 2 leaders, because I believe that this is very important to the Caribbean and it's very important to Africa. As Marcus Garvey championed almost 100 years ago. And the reason why it is important, it's not about politics, it's not about race, it's not about anything to do with that. What it is about is that us as Africans living in the Caribbean, we need a motherland. And I can point out many examples, like India, is a motherland. Anywhere you go, anywhere you are in the world and you are descendants of that great land of India, you can stand assured that India will always be there. And we see even what went on recently, like in Ukraine. For the first time, we see like a European country that's in war, like in our lifetime. And we see how Europe, America came together, and we see the billions of dollars that's poured into the Ukraine. That is what we want. We want a motherland. We want a strong Africa to be there for like any other African small black nations that are suffering, that we have a strong nation that can stand up and be there. How amazing it would be like if what Haiti is going through right now. If Africa was strong enough to, a powerful continent that could say, you know what, we'll send billions of dollars, we'll rebuild your economy. That is what we are looking for. That was Marcus Garvey's dream. That was his mission, to create a strong motherland. So, as I said, it's not about politics, it's not about any of those things that reparation or anything like that. We just need a strong Africa, and that's what it's all about. So tell me how you feel about, you know, Wode Maya and his mission in connecting Africa to the diaspora, and just showcasing Africa, that Africa is a continent that is filled with natural resources. It's not all suffering and, you know, crime and all of that. That Africa is a beautiful and a lovely place to visit, and that we should all aim to visit Africa as descendants of Africa. So just tell me how you feel in the comment section, and you know, I would just like to use this opportunity to, like, you know, Wode Maya, to give him his flowers, because sometimes we wait until it's too late, you know, to give people their fair due. And what Wode Maya has been able to do in the past 3 years is just amazing. So kudos to Wode Maya, and you know, keep up the good work. So thank you for watching, and please leave your comment in the comment section, and let's have an interactive discussion about this one. Thank you and peace. I'm out.